So before I get started on this particular entry, I want to give a bit of a disclaimer. I, under no circumstance, have a background in psychology, psychotherapy, mental health education, or mental health awareness beyond my own personal experiences. So if I do reference something from my own personal dealings, I will preface it by saying such. However, I have done a fair amount of research through nationally acclaimed and accredited organizations. So I will be quoting different things here and there throughout the course of this entry, but I will reference which organization I found it from. So if you see me looking down a lot during the course of this entry, it's because I'm referencing my notes. However, I do want to stress one very, very important thing, and that is every single person is different. So some of these things you might be able to relate to, some you may not. But like any Let's Talk About entry that I have done in the past, this is merely to establish a conversation. I am not here to tell you what to do or offer advice. I just want to get the ball rolling, so if this is something that might be impacting you, it's something that you can think about and maybe talk to somebody else that you know, or maybe even yourself. So with that being said, let's talk about a subject that is very serious and very personal to me. And that subject is depression. First of all, I want to get out of the way that I'm not talking about the mood depression. I am talking about major depressive disorder, aka MDD, or clinical depression. And there is a difference between the mood and the mental condition. So if I do reference the mood depression, I will be very specific, but going forward, if I say the word depression, assume that I'm talking about the mental condition. Now, according to the National Institute of Mental Health, obviously anybody can feel depressed for a brief period of time and exude symptoms of depression. However, if those symptoms last longer than a period of 2 weeks, there is a strong chance, and I want to stress chance, that it might be depression, the condition. But one thing I also want to be specific about is this is probably one of the most common mental disorders, as much as I hate using the word disorder, in the world. According to a survey that was polled by the Centers for Disease Control, or CDC, 8.1% of Americans who took the poll said they felt like they had symptoms of MDD. And this was in a period between 2013 and 2016. Now, we've all heard the symptoms of what depression is. Feelings of little self-worth or very low self-worth, low energy, possibly feeling very angry at times or very upset at times, even though it might be illogical to why you're feeling those. Just logy, not wanting to get out of bed. We've all heard those symptoms before. And also, according to CDC, 80% of people that feel like they were diagnosed with MDD or felt symptoms of it felt like it impacted their work life, their home life, and their social life. So I want to stress and get out of the way that while this is one of the most common and treatable mental conditions, it's also one of the most serious. And so with that being said, why am I bringing this up, particularly if I don't have a professional background in it? Why am I playing a game of this beehive looks safe and could possibly trigger a lot of anger from people saying, well, if Boogie Knight is just bringing up statistics and his own personal experiences, he doesn't have the right to do so. Well, here's the thing that I also want to talk about, is it's very personal for me, like I said in the beginning of this entry. And so why am I talking about it? Well, for longtime viewers of the Sonic Boogie Project, y'all know that I've been fairly open about discussing, what's going on up here, talking about my anxiety, talking about my depression. And that's just my own way of kind of just, getting it out of the way, being very open about what's happening with me. And I know other content creators who are more open about talking about their depression, that are open about talking about what's going on with their emotions and their lives. And I commend them for that. I think that a lot of people, particularly those that are in kind of the public, and I'm using YouTube and Twitch and whatnot as an example, that it's a good thing to kind of say like, hey, here's what's going on, and this is why it might impact what I do. But I don't want to just keep this towards content creators specifically. I want to have this as a broad range of people in general, to viewers, to people that I'm friends with, people that I've worked with in the past, people that I talk to online on my Discord channel and everything, because once again, we don't know what's going on if people don't talk about it. In fact, this morning before I recorded this, the You Rock Foundation, which is a mental health and suicide prevention organization, separate from the American Foundation of Suicide Prevention, of course, posted a tweet that it was like, I'm paraphrasing here, it's like there are 86,000 seconds in a day and it only takes 1 second to smile. So for the remaining seconds, you don't know what's going on inside a person's mind, what's going on inside their heart or their emotions. And not everybody is as open to talk about it for one reason or the next. And some are still afraid to talk about or even admit or broach the fact that, hey, there is something going on, or I think there might be something going on with me. This sadness has lasted a lot longer than I care to admit. And I know it's the 21st century and everybody should be a little bit more open to say, about their feelings. But here's the thing too, is even though decades later, when, once again, going back to saying that this is one of the more common, if not most common, mental conditions, there still is a stigma attached to it. I think the most common stigma attached to depression is that it's a sign of weakness. And of course, that is an extremely false accusation. It's not something you can control. It's not something that makes you weak. And every person wants to exude that air of confidence and competence. And if it walks like a duck and talks like a duck, it's a duck. So if you're portraying yourself as confident, if you're portraying yourself as a strong-willed individual, maybe everything's going to be okay. But it's not. And to say that if you are depressed, you're far from weak, because it's not something that you can do, that you can handle 100% of the time. And that's actually something I'm going to get into in just a moment. Another stigma attached to that is it's something you can get over easily. In fact, Boy in a Band, a rapper and content creator on YouTube, did a piece called Don't Trust Prince E. And I'm not going to get into details of that. If you want to go watch it, you really should. It's Boy in a Band, one word, on YouTube. Actually posted a video of a college professor, and whether I quote him directly or not, I'm just going to try and paraphrase what the professor said. Said something the equivalent of, there's this voice in your head, pull yourself together, we all go through this. And he's not saying that to tell people you should pull yourself together. He's saying that because he is referencing that stigma, saying that, it's going to be okay. You can get over this very easily. We all get depressed. But once again, that's the mood depression. If you do have symptoms of MDD or clinical depression, it's going to make you feel worse, because if people tell you to get over it easily and you feel like you can't, that's just going to make it even the worse. And I think that's another reason people are afraid to talk about it. And this is something that I personally have dealt with in the past, is people saying, well, it's going to be fine, you're going to get over it. I'm not just saying in the past, I'm saying recently, when things have been at their worst for me. It's not just this little voice inside my head saying, you're going to be okay, you're going to get over it. I've had people tell me that it's a short-term issue, that, long-term you're going to be fine. And maybe I will be okay down the pike. But when you are at your worst and you're staring that dark thing in the face, the last thing you want to hear is somebody tell you, you're going to be all right. Because to me personally, it almost feels like I'm being patronized. And to kind of dovetail off that, there is a content creator. I'm not going to say this content creator's name, because the point of this is not to throw shade at them, but it's a creator I no longer follow. And to once again paraphrase what they said, because I don't have the specific quote in front of me, it was something akin to, you are 100% in control, which is completely false. Nobody is, particularly those that have depression, diagnosed or undiagnosed, nobody's 100% in control of their emotions, particularly if it's situationally based. You might be in control of certain facets of a situation. You might be in control of certain parts of your emotions. But to say you're 100% in control if you have depression is not just a bold-faced lie. It is extremely ignorant. And going back to the patronizing thing, I think that makes it exponentially worse. So I think those are big reasons why people who have depression, who don't want to bring it up, that don't want to, fully admit that I think there might be something wrong, don't do it. But for the sheer fact, though, is if you feel like this is something that could be possibly debilitating and you don't take action to at least find out if you do have depression or not, it's gonna get worse. And if it does get worse, there are things that it can happen, such as, debilitations, self-medicating, alcohol or drug use, possibly even suicide. And I know it's not easy to do it. It took the longest time for me to admit that I had depression, that I have anxiety, that I still have it to this day. And there are some days when I'm thinking like, it would be easier if I just, sucked it up, and just didn't bog people down with the minutia when they have their own lives to lead. But Sun Tzu once said, know thy enemy. As cliche as that sounds, you've got to people with depression or mental conditions to begin with have to come to a point where they say enough is enough, sweeping this under the rug, ignoring the stigma, or ignoring the fact that I've got it in favor of the stigmas. No, it's going to get a lot worse. So with that being said, what steps can you take to try and get better? Well, first of all, admit to the fact that there could possibly be something wrong. And with that being said, there are free resources out there online. Particular, we live in an age of information and electronics. There are ways you can go to anonymously maybe kind of look at a checklist out there to say, okay, this is something that I do exude, this is something that I possibly exude, this is something that I may or may not. That's how I kind of first admitted to the fact that, okay, this isn't just a short-term thing, this is something that's affected me long-term. I forget what the website was, in fact it might be defunct at this point, there was a checklist saying, here's something, and it was like all the time, some of the time, not at all. And then that was just one free resource for me personally. And this was back in, early 2000s, and this is something, once again, that I've been dealing with since I was in my teens. But there are free resources out there, anonymous free resources. So if you feel like you aren't in the position to maybe talk to your family or talk to your very close friends or maybe somebody you work with or a classmate, you can tap into these resources. I'll do more research later on to look up these resources. So if you are interested in finding out more, as well as the information that I talked about previously statistic-wise, please feel free to message me or email me through YouTube. You can message me through Twitter, through Discord, that kind of thing. I will gladly share what I find with you. But the big thing that I want to stress is talk to somebody out there. If you feel like you are, drowning, if you feel like this is something that is getting worse, you have to talk to somebody. Going back to the Iraq quote that I said earlier, not everybody knows what's going on inside you. Only you can be the one to say that and to kind of crack the code. But there is no harm in talking to somebody. Once again, it doesn't have to be a professional, although that is probably the best resource out there, because not only can they kind of point to the fact that if you do have depression, or if you do know that you have depression, kind of offer some solution. It doesn't have to be medication-based or anything like that. It can be regular therapy. It can be somebody saying, maybe here's some steps that you can try to slowly get better, or at least fight the depression so it doesn't debilitate you, so you can go on with your daily life like a regular person. I'm not going to say the word normal person, because nobody's normal, and once again, stressing again, every single person is different. Getting help is essential to getting better. However, I do want to stress two key points when talking to somebody, when trying to receive help from somebody that's not a professional, or a professor, that too. The first of all is what I call oversaturation of help. And this is something that I am guilty of doing. I am one of those individuals that if somebody is going through some stuff, whether mentally or in actuality, I will drop what I'm doing to make sure that they are aware that they have a contact point or a bolt hole with me. And thinking about this a little bit is that, there will be times when I'm like, I will do follow-ups, and I certainly think that there are some friends of mine, very close friends of mine, that if I keep checking in with them, they're probably thinking to themselves, okay, it's okay, man, I'll get a hold of you if I need an ear. Because, also for me personally, people need time, myself included, to think about what they're going through, to think about, well, okay, this is some information that, that I've received, or this person said, hey, I'm here for you. But too much of a good thing might lead them to just basically kind of just pull back even further inside themselves. And that's something I do as well personally, is I will wall up if I feel like maybe I'm being oversaturated. But the second thing I also want to say in the talking to somebody or asking for help department is getting and giving unwanted advice. And this ties back into the pull yourself together thing, because some people need to vent, some people need to offload and say, I've got depression, here's why I'm doing that, because listening goes a long way. And only by hearing the whole story can you give your own personal thoughts on the matter, saying, here's what I can offer you, or if you're a professional, here's what I think is the best course of action in accordance with what you told me. But giving unwanted advice, saying, well, you should do this, you should do that, you should do that, because not everybody has the entire picture. Not everyone can say specifically, well, I feel like this is a problem, this is a case, this is a case, this is a case. And I know people who will give unwanted advice, particularly if they don't know the whole story. And if you know somebody that is giving unwanted advice or uncalled for advice, I'm not saying step up, be an adult, but they're going to keep doing it unless you tell them to dial it back. Say, look, I need time to think about it, or I appreciate it, but this is not what I'm looking for. I don't want your advice right now. Because, once again, not everybody knows. But you have to be the first person to tell them what is going on. And the first person to tell them, back off. So, once again, the whole point of this is not to offer advice. It's not to tell people. It's just, I know people that are on that 1 yard line, but are afraid to cross over and say, I have depression. Afraid to talk about it, afraid to think about it. And once again, maybe you know somebody else that you're worried about, that you're concerned for, that you think that this is not just a speed bump on the highway going 80, that it's much worse, it's much more serious. We have these conversation points to bring it up. And I know people that in past Let's Talk Abouts have benefited from these baselines, that these small little points. But finally, it's only to share my thoughts on what I've gone through, that what I've experienced, as well as the statistics that I have quoted. Because what it comes down to personally is, I think one of the most common things when it comes to somebody with anxiety, or in this case depression, is feeling alone. Which, of course, even though it's a highly illogical thing to think about, is that it's probably one of the more common ones. And there are days that go by, not just ones in the far past, but recently, as late as, recent as last night, of feeling alone. And that's one of the biggest things of Let's Talk About, is you are never alone. There is a strength in numbers, and whether you know it or not, there are people out there that want you to be okay, that want you to get on the mend, that want you to be happy with the way things are. And for what it's worth, I have been there. I know I will be in that position again. Whether it's, today, tomorrow, next week, there will be a time when I feel absolutely alone and I'm staring the dark place right in the face. But remember, you are never alone. And this will get better, but you have to take the first step to getting to that point. So I hope this Let's Talk About has shed a little light on things, and maybe, just maybe, it will start a conversation. But the one thing that I want anybody that's watching this to take away from this is simple. I believe that things will get better one day. I believe in that, and I believe in you.